Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name's Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today, and we are bringing you the latest and greatest from the VR, AR, and XR industries. And today we have on a very special guest. We have on Marine. She is a Senior UX Designer for Artefact. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we have a very special Friday the 13th edition of our podcast, our video blog. And so hopefully everything goes well on the technological side and we'll have a great conversation today. So can you go ahead, can you give us a brief introduction to what you do with Artefact and what Artefacts' mission and purpose is?
Sure. So I'm Marine. My pronouns are they, them. So I specialize in speculative interaction design at Artefact. So a lot of my work is focused on envisioning future concepts that are about 5 to 10 years out in education and healthcare.
Okay, great. And what is Artefacts' mission like overall? What kind of work does it hope to achieve and for its clients as well?
We're really focused on creating preferable futures, and that's a really broad term. So we also think about like preferable for whom. So one thing that we're trying to do for our clients is to create solutions that are not only in service of the business, but also in service for different communities, especially communities that are historically deprioritized.
Gotcha. And I know that one of the great things about XR is that it allows people more access. It kind of democratizes the technologies needed to give people training, help them with certain issues, or to help to, upskill a lot of workers. So we're going to get into that with our conversation for today. So I suppose the first question I'd like to pose to you is that, on our side of the work, we've seen a lot of immersive solutions being deployed to help with massive upskilling demand across the industry. Could you explain to us why businesses, including military, first responders, consultants, even medical professionals, are using XR technologies to train their future workforces?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned, it has a huge potential to solve a lot of these equity gaps is one reason, but I think a lot of it is that the technology offers a standardization at a scale that we never had before for training. It also moves a lot of training from theory into practice, which is really important because as many books and lectures you read about something, you don't become an expert until you actually do it many times over again. And this is particularly true in medicine for surgeons, but also in other fields. I think another really important reason is because it offers a really safe training environment. It's very low risk, so it can transform a lot of high risk training environments into something that is really accessible as well as safe for both the person doing the training and whoever is involved in it.
Brilliant. Yeah, excellent response on that. And we do see that, it kind of offers that safe space for training a lot of the professionals. So that way they have the chance to, do the exercises over and over again. That includes, greater retentions for a lot of the, information that they learn during those processes. We wanted to actually go into that a bit further, so many of them have found more holistic approaches to learning, and this has resulted in roughly 75% retention rates and significantly streamlined upskilling outcomes. So for Artefact, what do they think of this, and how does your company help to achieve this goal?
I think that makes a lot of sense. We also, from our work, see the same outcomes. And to facilitate this holistic learning, what we often do is consider the broader set of stakeholders. So with learning, it's very easy to just focus on the students, the person who's doing the training. But it's also actually really important to consider the educators, the people involved in the curriculum, also the people who are supporting the learning. So if we're talking about younger demographics who are not necessarily doing like industrial training, a lot of it, a lot of support comes from their family, from their parents or their caregiver, because like something we often hear is like, they changed math. Like I can't help my kid learn math because they changed it. So that's a huge anecdote that we consider always. How is this material and this technology accessible to people who are really critical to the learning experience? Another thing we also consider is the context. So a huge benefit of XR is being able to learn remotely no matter where you are. And that context is very, very different from a classroom context. Everybody's home environment or the access to different environment is very different. And so that significantly changes the XR experience from a technical perspective, including like how much space you have, like what's the sound interference, like what is the visual clutter in your environment, but also changes like your emotional context. What is your cultural background? Where are you at? Do you feel safe? And all of that stuff. So we consider not only the physical, but emotional and the like mental health aspect of these experiences. And the last thing we also consider is, well, not the very last, but one of the core things we consider is habit forming experiences. So you need to be able to consistently engage with this technology. The technology itself cannot become a barrier and become off-putting. So we always consider the ergonomics of the interaction. So when we talk about ergonomics, it's easy to think about physical products, but that's kind of the funny space that XR is in. It's digital and physical. So it's really important to consider the strain it has on the body.
Yeah, excellent observations. And, we find that, there's a lot of things that we have to look at, when we use XR technology to interface with the general public or with new trainees, new hires. Certain cases like Accenture, where they deployed 60,000 headsets to train and upskill their workers prior to onboarding and to taking on their new roles. And I think that this is one of the biggest use cases in the entire industry, where people can learn how to acquire the skills they need at a rapid rate with the best retention rates. So I was going to ask you, like, for Artefact, speaking on the technology and the technological aspects of it, how has Artefact created certain solutions that help with immersive learning? And what are some of the most innovative proprietary solutions that your company holds?
Yeah. So I can't really disclose, the specifics of these innovative proprietary solutions, but I think a lot of the solutions we work in are about languages, because the most efficient way to learn language is immersive learning. And a huge potential of XR is to actually bridge a lot of communication gaps. And so with XR, it kind of changes the paradigm of learning, because you can wear it for longer, ideally in the future, and you can have more small bursts and consistent continual learning, and not have it in short bursts, focused learning like Duolingo, or even in classroom. You're a lot easier. There are different ways to absorb information in the future. And so we like to think about language use cases, and not only spoken languages, but also sign languages. And so for example, we look at someone like a family that's bilingual. So like intergenerationally, maybe you have a bilingual grandparent, and a grandchild doesn't necessarily speak that language. So we think about how these technology can actually facilitate learning outside of the classroom or training environment itself. We also have designed for conferences, thinking about how we make them accessible at a global perspective, and also not just something you sit, listen, and digest, but learning through engaging and doing something at a conference, through actually socializing with people and actually facilitating that socialization, helping that connection last longer. Another use case that was really interesting to us that we worked on was this idea of being able to share your CPU from one device from another. So, CPU is one technical challenge that's one of the many technical challenges that we struggle with XR devices today, like the field of view and stuff like that. So there's this idea of like, what if you have one really strong CPU at home, but you're able to share that to other devices depending on who in the home or in the team needs that. So, this is really important for bridging inequity gaps where, lower income families might not all have access to really strong, powerful devices required to run some of these training programs. So yeah, I think another thing that's a bit like nearer term that we think about is integrating these experiences with physical learning physical learning materials, because this is really important in the early adoption of XR.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think on the XR side, more like the mixed reality side, that's where they'll be able to tap into that kind of solution the best, where you can blend the physical and the virtual worlds, and give people the chance to kind of do real-time exercises that can help them greatly. I've seen a couple of demos from Varia, which allow them to, work or collaborate on the same types of projects at the same time from any part of the world. So that's the one thing. It kind of transcends boundaries, borders, and distances for a lot of workers, which could help narrow that gap. But yeah, great. I wanted to ask you also, so you mentioned that you completed work with a firm to impact the emotional and mental well-being of patients. And in this particular solution, you focus on the overall well-being of the person. Getting into the human and the more emotional side of, XR technology, do you believe that XR should remain human-centric, and why so?
I think for all technology, it's really important to remain human-centric. I think it's really easy to get carried away, especially if you're a tech enthusiast, by what the technology can do. But instead, we should think about what the technology should and need to do for the people, because at the very center of everything we make, it's for people. So I think being human-centric is crucial to actually making sure we design solutions that solve a real need and have meaningful impact, instead of creating frivolous solutions just for the sake of using a cool new technology. But I think in this day and age, it's not important to just be human-centric, especially when we're designing for complex systems and industries like education and healthcare. I think we have to actually shift a little bit to think about communities and not the individual when we think about the human in the word human-centric, especially in a learning environment where the social aspect of learning is really impactful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, maybe about your experiences with XR, or any, potential observations on the future of where it's going?
Yeah, so I think right now the industry is really fast paced, and there's a lot of corporate solutions being developed as funding is rolling that way, and there's a lot of really practical use cases for it. But I think the really strong solutions that are urgently needed these days are solutions in XR that bridge communication gaps and accessibility needs. I think they have a lot of potential, but one of the challenges is that it requires a more ubiquity or wide adoption of XR. But something that was really interesting that Reality Labs at Meta has been doing in the last few years is working on an audio technology that pairs with XR that they call enhanced hearing. And it is an idea that, with all the sensors on the headset, what we can actually do is allow people to focus their audio source on a specific source in a crowded environment, or allow people who are harder hearing or deaf to be actually enhance certain audio sources for them. And I think there are a lot of these interesting ideas out there that unlock new ways of thinking about XR that can impact a lot of different spaces, not only just education or just, travel or gaming. These are really strong solutions that have really wide application and really important impact. And I think especially in the education space, it's really important that solutions bridge that equity gap, because if we think about technology, we don't really want to reinforce the gaps that we have now. For example, there are a lot of financial gaps between like private school and public school, where there are certain resources and types of curriculum that people don't have access to, and that's just going to further inequity later down the line. So with XR, there's a huge potential to actually target different types of learning styles and learning abilities, as well as actually create continual learning support outside the classroom. And it's also a great way to, like paired with legislation, a great way to ensure people have equal access to this technology, because the education system works with the library, works with a lot of resources that can distribute these and have new pricing models or different access models for this technology. And the last thing I wanted to add is that, a lot of the training and education is focused on, more professional training for adults. But I think that there's a potential for training for younger demographics. Because if we think of, for example, Microsoft, what they did 20, 30, 40 years ago, I have no concept of time, was that they introduced Microsoft Word and typing games at a very young age in primary school, and people who grew up on those software continue to use them, even if competition, rose in later down the line. Their new software, they grew up on that, and they already, like, it's part of their mental model and how they're used to interacting with the technology. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to build these fun programs for a younger demographic for learning purposes.
Absolutely. But yeah, it was excellent observations once again, and I do thank you for your time, and happy Friday the 13th as well. Yeah, hopefully. And thanks so much for your time, observations, and as well as, all the best to you in the future for Artefact. So once again, this has been Marine Au Leung. She is the Senior UX Designer for Artefact. And my name is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today. If you like these kind of conversations, please join us on social media at the XR News hashtag. You can join us at Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And thank you so much for coming out and listening to us again. All the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and giving me a chance to share these ideas.
Great. Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.